talk more specifically about the income tax and who was on which side, both within the Democrats and within the Republicans. It was a Cahill administration proposal, but many Republicans were vigorously opposed to that. But give us your own recollection of who was standing where.
Well, let me start with the Republicans. Among the Republicans, of course, their leadership stayed with Governor Cahill and a handful of others. I think that there were, if memory serves, there were, when the vote came on the Cahill tax package, there were 9 Republicans that voted for it and 15 Democrats. It only got about the 24 votes, that, as I recall the numbers at this point. Among the 15 Democrats, you had at least 6 to 7 that came from, or maybe more, that came from the urban areas. And then there were several others like myself who came from suburban districts, but who felt that this was important for the state and treated it as an issue that had statewide implications. By that time, the Robinson-Cahill education finance case had been decided in the lower court, in the trial court by Judge Ted Botter, and that the only way to finance what was being demanded of us by the judiciary would be by adopting a broad-based tax. At that time, we had a sales tax in place. I don't recall whether it was 3 or 4% that had been adopted by Governor Hughes during his administration. But clearly it was insufficient to fund the educational needs of the state. So that there was that number of people who stuck with the governor on that program.
Given that you were representing a district that was somewhat balanced in terms of party registration, and that you really hadn't had an awful lot of time to cement your sort of incumbency in the Assembly, did you view the vote for the tax as a possible career-threatening move in terms of your electoral career?
I don't want to sound pompous, and I don't want to sound as if I had made these idealistic decisions. I had always been in favor of a broader-based tax for the state. We were archaic in the way in which our tax system operated in the 60s and 70s, even with the adoption of a minimal sales tax. So it was a decision that I had come upon early on, having an interest in public affairs, and that seemed to me to be a precondition to bring New Jersey into the modern era in a whole variety of ways, not only education. And I did not think of that vote in terms of whether it was going to help or hurt my career. When I went into public office, I went in with the premise that I would vote on matters depending upon what I thought was the right way to go. And it's not that I did not accede to political pressures at times. I certainly did. But when it came to matters as fundamental as tax policy, I just had made a determination long before I got into the Assembly, if I ever had the chance, that was the route I would go in. There was also, and I am candid to say it now, as well as at that time, in my district, I was hurt less by a vote in favor of an income tax than some of my colleagues were in some of their districts, suburban districts. And what I mean by that is that the demographics of my district showed many, many people, good portion of the voting population, working in New York, living in New Jersey, working in New York, paying New York City and New York State taxes. And they would be getting a credit for any New Jersey taxes paid against those foreign jurisdiction taxes. And as a result, they were not going to be really hurt. As a matter of fact, they may even have benefited in some, depending upon the amount of tax they had to pay, may even have been benefited from the institution of a tax program in the state, while at the same time getting the benefit of money, more money for the schools, more money for infrastructure in the cities, and so on. So that I did not think I would be politically hurt anyway, no matter what I believed before.
Despite the perception among a lot of voters that this was a proposal to bail out the urban schools and the cities, that didn't sort of weigh in the calculus that you sort of had to make in terms of your vote?
It weighed in the calculus, but I felt that first, the population of my district was a well-educated population, with most of the people that I had to face at election time understanding the value of education in a more global sense. How it affects the amount of crime that we had to deal with, how it affects the prosperity of the individuals involved, that a good education was a foundational matter that should not have been tainted by political considerations. With that in mind, the fact that I was able to appeal on an intellectual level to people in my district, making that type of argument, left me with a comfortable feeling that it was not going to hurt me politically.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Cahill administration failed in its efforts to push its tax proposal, which also led to a split within the Republican Party that later came back to haunt Governor Cahill's re-election campaign. What were the other issues that you dealt with in the Assembly, both for and against the Cahill administration?
The other issues really were so subordinate to the tax and finance issues that it's hard to think in terms now of other matters that might have been hot-button issues where we had tough things going. I will say that I felt very much in tune with the direction in which Governor Cahill was going. I think he was a serious man who was trying to do an honest job, and it was a shame that for those reasons he was knocked out by Charles Sandman in the gubernatorial primary later on.